But without further ado, Elise Hauser is a creative writer from the Pacific Northwest who is currently pursuing her MFA in creative nonfiction. Her previous accolades include a Writing Between the Vines residency and being a finalist in creative article category in 2020, and honorable mention in the genre short story category in 2021. When she's not writing, she's exploring her passions for literature, dance, travel, and fashion. Everyone give it up for Elise! Yeah! Is that good? Yes. All right, I wanted to read you all a true story about the ocean. And while I read, I want to pass around this book about sea creatures because I just think the visuals are beautiful and important. It's always nice to have a prop. This essay is called The Tragedy of the Abyss. In 1977, two researchers in a submersible called Alvin plunged into the Galapagos Rift, an underwater rift valley where Earth's geologic plates come apart, in search of a hydrothermal vent. They would become the first humans to encounter these once theoretical sources of superheated water on the deepest ocean floor. Yet their voyage to the bottom of the sea became historic for an entirely different reason. When they found their vent, one of the researchers picked up the sub's phone and made an unexpected call to the research vessel thousands of feet above. "Isn't the deep ocean supposed to be like a desert?" he asked. "Yes." "Well, there's all these animals down here." The Alvin researchers had discovered one of the globe's best-kept secrets, the presence of life in the deep ocean. This revelation began with relatively mundane animals: brown mussels, white clams and crabs, a solitary purple octopus. Today, though, our knowledge of deep ocean life has expanded into the realm of the seemingly fantastical. There's the barrel-eye fish, an otherwise ordinary-looking fish with a transparent skull through which its spherical green eyes appear like strange gems behind glass. There's the sockworm, affectionately called the purple sock, which looks precisely like its name suggests, crumpled on the ocean floor, and is actually not a worm at all. In fact, researchers still haven't decided which phylum to place it in. There's the pink see-through fantasia, a sea cucumber only discovered in 2007. Unlike most sea cucumbers, it can swim, floating through the depths with a transparent pink body that makes visible its entire digestive system, illuminated by its own bioluminescent glow. Aside from the intestines, it looks like an inflatable pink pool floating. We have photographs of each of these deep sea creatures and many more. You can find them in books, in documentaries, on Wikipedia pages. They're pleasingly absurd, like children's drawings come to life, and at the same time vaguely haunting, so monstrously different are they from any living thing here on land. In the depths, alien-looking adaptations are common: translucence, weird hairy appendages, bioluminescent sparkles lighting up the black zones far below the sun's last rays. I feel something exquisite and precious when I look at these creatures, living so far beyond the natural reach of humans. It's a privilege to see them at all. So lucky that an underwater camera managed to capture a barrel-eye fish or a pink see-through fantasia, if only for a moment. To desire ocean floor treasures beyond these natural fantasies seems like hubris, an absurd refusal to be satisfied with what we've been given. But we do. People have discovered that the abyss contains not just life forms, but commodities, like valuable metals. You can't easily sell pink see-through fantasias, beautiful though they may be. But there is a consistent market for the ocean's more static gifts. Plans are underway to begin mining the deep ocean floor in less than 2 years. Right now, we know less about the deep sea than we do about deep space. Scientists estimate that there are anywhere from a few 100,000 to over 10 million undiscovered species in the ocean. The prospect of mining stands to rip apart this mysterious environment before it's ever truly known, in order to obtain its pricier secrets, resources like tellurium and yttrium, copper, and nickel. The proposed mining process involves dredging the ocean floor, each company's machines removing thousands of square miles of seabed each year. As of June 2021, 30 companies have been authorized by the International Seabed Authority, or ISA, to explore the deep sea for mining. Underwater vehicles the size of trucks will make their way over the seafloor in slow, orderly rows, bulldozing the top 5 inches as they go. Effectively, it's underwater strip mining. This removed layer of seafloor will be piped to the surface, sifted for valuable materials, and then dumped back into the ocean. Vast quantities of sediment sinking slowly back to the abyssal zone. I cannot picture this without picturing the precious creatures, clams and weird worms and sea cucumbers and new and unknown species that will inevitably meet their demise in the process. The ISA was established to regulate seabed mining in parts of the sea not controlled by any specific country. That's the vast majority of the ocean. These wild and distant underwater places are referred to by the ISA rather dismissively as the area with a capital A. I wonder if this language makes it easier to march unquestioningly into a new era of oceanic destruction. The ISA is in charge of environmental protection as well as issuing mining contracts, and certain places will be off limits to miners to protect the natural seabed. Yet, with so much unknown about the ocean floor's environments and life forms, there's little to suggest that even selective mining won't have devastating consequences. If the seafloor is raked up in search of useful metals, we'll be left to wonder, what else might we have discovered there? What experiences have we missed? What might we have learned? Once a deep ocean environment is destroyed, of course, it cannot be replaced. The natural mysteries down there, billions of years in the making, will be gone forever. As a child, I used to draw elaborate maps of fantasy lands, assigning names to invented forests, mountains, and coastlines. I drew dragons and pegasi and other winged toothy beasts, obsessed with the idea of encountering a creature so rare it was thought to be mythological, of being the first one to know the truth. I adored the type of hero's journey tale in which an ordinary person stumbles upon an unknown world, filled with flora and fauna and thrills no other human had been privileged to see. I also, like many of the other girls I knew, included marine biologist on my list of possible dream jobs. I was raised in Washington State, in that watery corner around Seattle, where the land fractures into a cacophony of islands and peninsulas. So I knew well that proximity to the sea didn't make it any less of a mystery, and that because it was a mystery, it was worthy of attention. Although I liked fishing, my favorite water activity was when my parents would take us out on the boat with the crab pots. Dropped empty to the bottom of Puget Sound, we would pull them up a few hours later, filled with a fantastical and absurd, fat red Dungeness crabs, yes, but also lanky orange starfish, spiny purple-black urchins, and the rare prize of a giant wriggling golden sunstar. We put everything except the big crabs back in the water, but the images of the other creatures would remain imprinted on my mind long after the crabs had been boiled and eaten, shells cracked and discarded. Only as an adult have I realized why marine biology held such sway over me and my childhood cohort. It fulfilled the same desire for fantasy worlds that made us love Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. It was a real-world example of ordinary people encountering extraordinary creatures, learning about a mysterious world, and reporting back with privileged information. It was a chance to know the unknown. While I intellectually balk at the decimation of rainforests and marshlands, it doesn't hold the same pain for me as the possibility of destroying the deep seafloor. It's not merely the destruction of nature, but the loss of the unknown, the abandonment of a fantasy land. It seems to signify a loss of curiosity, which feels tantamount to the loss of humanity itself. Do the proponents of deep sea mining really not care at all what's down there, unless they can make money from it? What does it mean to be a member of a species that could make such a choice? The great irony of deep sea mining, though, is that it has arguable environmental benefits. Items to be made using materials from the deep sea include such noble prospects as electric cars, wind turbines, and solar panels. Deep sea mining advocate Gerard Barron, chairman of the dystopian-sounding metals company, has argued that transitioning to clean energy will require billions of tons of metal, and that taking that metal from the seafloor would be environmentally preferable to taking it from dry land. Without the transition to clean energy, global warming will soon become unstoppable, and so will the rising seas, the droughts, the food shortages, the unsurvivable storms that follow. Perhaps this is what it's come to. Maybe humanity will have to make way, given how little we know about it. Humans may not live underwater, but the ocean is still life-sustaining for us. Oceanic life, primarily plankton, produces at least half of the oxygen on Earth. The deep sea is far removed from those photosynthesizing surface dwellers that make oxygen, of course. Still, as grade school students learn in science class, nature's web is interconnected. Touch one strand, and it will reverberate far beyond where you may have guessed. In 1968, ecologist Garrett Hardin warned of the tragedy of the commons, in which humans seeking to maximize personal gain will inevitably deplete shared natural resources. Hardin was a white nationalist with fascist tendencies who largely shouldn't be listened to at all, but on this one subject, he did have a point. In his famous example, cattle herders each try to keep as many cattle as possible on a common pasture because more cattle equals more money. In the end, though, the pasture becomes overgrazed, and there's nothing left for anybody. The sea is the largest commons we have here on Earth. Over 70% of the planet's surface is ocean, and the Pacific Ocean itself is wider than the moon. Arguments of environmental benefits aside, there's a great deal of money to be made from extracting the metals and other resources beneath it. It's hard to picture a scenario in which this vast commons won't be depleted in short order after mining begins. And while the potential loss of many strange and chimerical creatures feels immediately tragic, the reverberations of that damage could be even worse. What might it do to the rest of the ocean, to the parts that provide us with food and oxygen? What will happen to the microbes that make life itself possible on Earth? Will we be left with the world's biggest overgrazed pasture? I did not grow up to become a marine biologist. Instead, I pursued an entirely different side of childhood fantasy and became a writer. I am also not a mining expert or an oceanographer or any of the other things that would give me the expertise to comment on the prospect of mining the ocean floor. Yet something compels me to comment anyway. I am enamored with the idea that there can still be unknowns in this world of fervent documentation, of constant cameras, of real-time dispatches from across the globe. And I am alarmed by the idea that we could destroy those unknowns without ever trying to know them. My alarm isn't motivated by the practical reality that decimating ocean life could decimate all of life on Earth. It's a more romantic desire to rescue the strange and beautiful, like plucking a moth from a puddle to save it from drowning. The prospect of destroying the abyssal sea doesn't so much terrify me as it confuses me, in a dystopian horror way, the way I imagine I'd feel upon encountering actual aliens or learning that my friend is an android. I can't understand it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit into the world I know, in which environmental destruction is real but sort of gradual, sort of we didn't realize it until it was too late, like deforestation or overflowing landfills. Not blindly destroying what we haven't even seen, we'll never see again. Not devastating the most interesting life forms on the planet. Fantasies come alive on Earth. Like throwing away an open gift in order to make room for a stack of cash. It's a decision so coldly practical as to seem inhuman. But the truth is, even without deep sea mining, the creatures of the deep ocean are imperiled. They're threatened in the same way that all of nature is, the slow, creeping way that's so easy to ignore until it's too late, like deforestation and landfills. Oil spills, sinking plastics, acidification, global warming, so many other hazards face the deep sea that focusing on seafloor mining seems almost futile. Even if environmental protests could stop the mining, isn't it all going to be gone soon anyway? Earth is currently undergoing a mass extinction event, thanks to the accumulation of modern human activity. A recent study from the International Union for Conservation of Nature found that over 500 species of land animals are near enough extinction to disappear within the next 20 years. Insect populations alone are declining at a fast enough rate that they could be gone, all of them, within 100 years. These are our pollinators, the foundation for our food sources and for countless ecosystems. When one species goes away, other species that depend on it tend to go away too. The extinction snowball picks up speed as it rolls down. The future this suggests is, I admit, beyond the reaches of my imagination. I have a vague sense of the possibilities. Plagues of pests without natural predators, crop shortages, starvation, a mad dash for survival resources, attempts to farm, to hunt and gather, to barter and scavenge. Yet I have no idea what this would look like in practice. How will we behave if our needs and wants are entirely divorced from money? If all the metals in the deep sea are worth less than a bag of potatoes in the end? Will we wonder how we strayed so far from our own basic needs? Or will the crush of mortality be too heavy for reflection? Earth has seen 5 mass extinction events already, starting long before humans were here to play a role. Yet the 6th one is happening at an unprecedented rate. It could be over in a matter of decades, while prior ones took a few million years. The planet has never seen anything like this before. Then again, it's never seen anything like our modern scale of pollution and damage before either. Our collective grubby hands grasping clumsily at the Earth's resources, taking too much, oblivious to what we break and destroy in the process. Extinction research tends to focus on land animals, which are easier to track, but the oceans are far from safe. Trash and pollutants have a remarkable ability to make their way to the sea, while overfishing and industrial noise pollution disrupt aquatic life cycles. Unknown underwater species are almost certainly going extinct already. No deep sea mining required, before we've even had the chance to discover them. Perhaps it's silly to fret over losing exotic deep sea creatures when we face extinction's potential threats to humanity itself. But it feels unfair to so quickly dismiss life forms that have shared our brief time here on Earth. Even the tragic dodo, after all, has a chance to be known, to be recorded for posterity, a reminder that some things, once gone, are gone forever. I recently asked someone I know if they had fireflies in upstate New York, where he's from. He said yes, they do, but not as many as they used to. The light shows of its childhood summer nights have been reduced to scattered twinkles in recent years, visual evidence of Earth's sixth mass extinction, in which even insects are faring poorly. I picture the deep sea of coming years in much the same way. The bioluminescent sparkles in the blackness gradually being extinguished, flickering out, leaving behind only the impression of what might have been, like a camera flash reverberating in our closed eyelids. Thank you. Hold on, Molly. That's a lot of words. Okay, give it up one more time for Elise. Thank you all for being here tonight. This is our first Gold Room of 2022. It's awesome to be here in person with you. I'm Nikki. My counterpart Michelle is on her way. She had a dead car battery, so her daughter went and picked her up. So when they walk in, we're gonna all cheer, which will probably interrupt you just for a second though. But Michelle's had a hell of a night, so if we could make sure that she feels really great when she walks in, that'd be awesome. Okay, our next reader is Ryan Mayer. Ryan is a poet, writer, and second-year MFA student studying poetry at UNO. A New Orleans native, his work has been published in Tilted House Review, 433 Magazine, and more. Give it up for Ryan. Come on, Ryan.
Hello.
Hey, Ryan.
So I guess I'll just get started with this, right?
Hard to hear you,
Mic check.
Ryan.
Is it hard to? Mic check, 1, 2.
Pull it up, baby.
Pull it up?
Yeah, here. You ever work a mic before?
No.
You gotta kind of, check it out.
Like that? Oh yeah. Much better, right?
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. Give a round of applause to my assistant, Jeremy. Alright, so this first poem I have for y'all tonight is called Midnight Mass Behind St. Louis Cathedral. From an Eden, sans fruit, trees or space, a statue of Jesus with lips fixed tight and arms outstretched sermonizes in silence like a tongueless preacher. Passers-by gather outside our wrought iron altar rail to celebrate a piecemeal midnight mass. The sleep deprived, like charismatics, babble while luscious keep singing in laughs and slurs. Water sprinkled from an unseen aspergillium merges with dripping sweat, and a faint urine mixed with daiquiri fragrance wafts from cobblestone. Then at the statue's feet, as an offer of fur and blood, a cat drops a carry-on while the transient congregation sips from styrofoam chalices. As the crowd processes down the street, a voice within its then cries, "We thank you, statue of our Lord, not for your watchful eyes, nor do we thank you for your arms still open as we sin. We thank you for the shade you cast on this cathedral's wall, a mural proving God's shadow looms larger than himself."
Woo.
And continuing with the religious theme, this next one's called Prayer for Your Mangled Lover. Relatable, I know. If you find your lover dead beneath streetcar wheels, mule hooves, or tires steered by some late night reveler, kneel beside her mangled corpse and pray. Oh, Amor Almighty, who suffered gratuitous death on grounds others often cross, rise on rickety limbs fragmented to administer to me emergency baptism. Dunk my head into this pothole filled with urban runoff. Wash my hair with bleeding feet, massage my scalp with broken toes. Hold me under until the breath of life surfaces as bursting blisters over your reflection. Pray these things with the hope your illustrated body will be interred inside your lover's oven crib to dry. And this one is called A Sparrow. Strolling through our favorite park, I saw your favorite animal, a sparrow, as stood as the one below your collarbone, below a cafe's window. You love sparrows for how they flutter from bell towers to eaves, utility poles to bird baths, toward crumbs then away from feet. And for how they see cracks and crepes or cavities and oaks as indistinguishable from an open hotel window. You once proposed, a sparrow needs a full chest to accommodate its heart, which would expand until ribs broke without the extra space. Filled more with putrefactive gas than with heart, this sparrow displayed the fullest chest I've ever seen. Ants crawled through the bird as through feathered crumbs. Its lissom tongue lolled from its beak onto leaves auburn as your hair, and over the one eye I saw, a tache noir, like the tattoo below your collarbone. Now we have a date to which she shows up late. Terrible experience, right? Garden clock hand stuck at 7. Her punctuality has been secured for hours. I prod my thumbnail with the dry end of a toothpick. Crane cloud passes by, draft of indole and jasmine and clove. Her signature perfume, palpitations. Mahogany spat creaks as she slouches into emptiness upon the chair across from me. No meat left to tender to it. I gesture at cold bones atop my plate, which stay undisturbed as a lucky corpse. But my Merlot ripples. I drain the glass, then nudge dredges toward her. Cranes like disapproving chaperones barrel over our table. Her perfume abates with the flight's wings, and I inhale effluvium from a vacant chair. This one is called The Singular Coquette. Her feet accustomed to uncomfortable terrain, from prancing along cypress knees that jut out like obelisks among headstones, from a morass where newts encamp with rotten toads, she glides down asphalt. Her fingers, tipped with dirt-polished nails, gesticulate hello to pigeons at an overflowing garbage can as though it were a bird feeder. Ignored but undeterred, she smiles, gaps and plaque-encrusted teeth, at clouds and twirls the aural of J. Trophy, a fountain's canticle, a beat-cooed melody, ditties from passing engines, a performance which she punctuates with a curtsy that causes her hair to bounce and feet her to float off in oily scalp. I long to be this singular coquette, to interpret mundane discord as a song to which to sway, and attempt to charm an audience with my decay. So I threw a little foreign poem in here. Hi, Michelle.
Hey.
So I threw a little foreign poem in here. I thought it might be fun. This is the poem's called a Peoples, but it's a curial, and a curial is kind of an old French form, fell out of fashion, but you know, whatever. Like a trombonist jeered off stage toward the exit Nemster Lears, I pass on neutral grounds between households that watch me through peepholes. Straws, shattered bottle, bloodstained page, retreats where bugs can disappear. Yet, topped with leaves, I crawl still seen by households watching through peepholes. Neighboring fences form a cage around me, hidden bugbears peer, and on me concentrate their spleen. They're glaring through pristine peepholes. Cheers.
Hey, cheers.
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 Alright, so this is called the Gallon. Thirsty for wine, I had gone out. When I heard a grating beneath my boots, I saw teeth. A pastel around me, too great to have come from an average mouth. I then noticed a beautiful Ghanaian, lying lengthwise before me. His hair on the Sunday concrete seemed like singed wicks, while a threadbare veil, sewn into his scalp, obscured his eyes and nose, and his lapel flower had long since withered into brown. Left over right, his hands over a swollen abdomen. One hand had 6 fingers. Each digit boasted precious metals. Within this hand, excessive in flesh and value, a cane's gold-tipped knob, clutched as though clubfoot prevented him from even gnawing steadily. One foot pointed inward, yeah. And bite marks riddled the leather pump on the other. However, having been polished, both shoes reflected my dry lips. Pardon, I said, and forgive me for this disruption in your diurnal fancies, but I would like to stroll where you obstruct. Flies burst forth from his mouth like an exhale. They commingled with cologne that bled through his blazer. Like a child among bubbles, I giggled in that rising swarm. I giggled until my eyes teared. And through tears, a beau ideal on alabaster bedding, beneath ashes and flecks of paint, beneath a decrepit boudoir standing. Ah, my eyes always make flowers out of charnel scenes. My lips cannot help likewise quirking at a grin among bones. And I got one more poem from y'all tonight. This was actually published in Untitled House Review, so thank you for that, guys. This poem is called Roman Candy, Strawberry Flavor. Y'all ever had Roman candy before?
Yeah.
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 So, Roman candy, strawberry flavored. Fun fact, based on a true story. Behind the window of a cart, behind a mule, pounds of pink taffy on a hook, like a suspended pig in a slaughterhouse. Gravity. The cloud's midsection thinned and bottom drooped until gloved hands folded, clump over clump. Dot or stick. One hand pulled, the other with scissors, snipped, then candy plopped onto a marble slab. A child-friendly display of evisceration that ended with a snack wrapped in wax paper so thin it teased me like see-through lingerie does. I pretended to be a gourmand, indifferent to white tablecloths and night jazz. Hoof clops delighted my ears as much as the sidewalk did my legs. I felt like a crow tearing away a snake's back when I tore away paraffin. A glare on the exposed pink seemed a vanilla stripe, but the candy smelled of air more than a barrier beam. I bit, craned my neck, a wisp between mouth and stick, broke, then floated onto chin stubble. I tasted the scent of strawberry candles. Sweetness dulled with modest tang, delicious imitation. My second bite, I made it too large. Taffy gripped like dental forceps my teeth. I spat out a candy-coated molder. Blood and flavoring swill filled my mouth. I never knew I could be so sweet. Thank you.
All right. Give it up one more time for Ryan.
Just a reminder, we have a sign up for open mic. 2 out of 5 slots are currently taken. So there's 3 readers left. We would love for you all to sign up for open mic. Okay, our next reader. And then we're taking our intermission. So Spencer is going to read, and then Henry's going to speak about LitWire, and then we're going to go on break. All right. Spencer Martin has the contradictory combination of ambition and sloth that is only fodder for his fantastical daydreams and fantasies. Originally from Central Indiana, he lives in New Orleans, finishing his MFA at the University of New Orleans Creative Writing Workshop. Currently, he is associate editor for Bayou Magazine, and on the job hunt for his post-MFA life, aren't we all? All right, give it up for Spencer. You got it. Okay.
I should.
Nice.
Worst case scenario, I can project.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So I'm going to be reading 2 flash pieces, and then if I have time, I might do an excerpt of a 3rd story.
You will.
We'll see how it goes. So the first one is called An Operatic Meditation on the Vampire in the Modern Age.
Oh my god.
Overture. Your relationship with Haley hasn't been the same since you stopped feeding off her.
Oh my god.
Celine, why don't you drink my blood anymore? She asked you in her apartment in gentrified Harlem, looking at herself in her antique, silver-plated mirror. You don't answer, not willing to tell her that her blood tastes rancid now. You show her tickets to the opera she has been wanting to go to, and that distracts her for a while. Act 1. The opera has ended. You and Haley wait in the line at the coat check, your arms crossed and left foot tapping. While you were reliving fond memories of seeing the opera first conducted by Mozart, Haley was bored by the production. Why did you want to come then, you ask her. She shrugs. It's good to be seen out at places like this. You feel a tap on your shoulder, and you turn and see a face that you have not seen in over a century. The woman that turned you into a vampire all those years ago. Diane? You ask. I thought that was you. Diana replies, her gray eyes beaming with recognition. The 2 of you hug, and Haley narrows her eyes. Who is this? Haley asks, barely able to hide her curtness. I'm an old friend of Celine's. Diana answers politely. You haven't seen Diane since the 2 of you parted ways around 1850, when you amicably parted ways after 400 years together. After you and Haley get your coats, Diane invites the 2 of you out for drinks. No, thank you, Haley answers before you can accept the invitation. You must be exhausted, Celine. I could go out for a little bit, you push back. Haley stares at you for several moments, but relents and says that she will see herself home. After wishing her a good night, you and Diane head to the bar at their hotel. Act 1 finale. It shouldn't have been a surprise that you ended up in Diana's bed that night. After having a few drinks with Diane, seeing her treat the waitstaff with respect, and hearing her compliment your appearance, you started to forget why you even started that relationship with Haley. Entr'acte. The next evening, you practice what you've been planning to say to Haley as you head towards her apartment. You plan on reminding her that things have not been working out for a while. You plan on telling her that it would be best to see other people. You plan on letting the possibility of you 2 getting back together exist, even if you don't want to. You plan on apologizing for wasting her time with this relationship. Act 2. I think we should break up, you tell Haley when you're in her apartment. She stares at you. What? You sigh. I'm leaving you. A pause, then a recognition. No, Haley says. You can't. You try to calm her down, try to tell her that this isn't her fault, but she doesn't listen. You were leaving me for that skank we met last night, she says. I saw the way she was flirting with you. Don't you dare address Diane like that, you reply. You step closer to Haley. We were supposed to be together forever, Haley says. All humans die someday, you reply. We couldn't be together forever. I thought you would turn me, she screams. You remain silent. You never thought about turning Haley. You realize that you were never able to imagine an eternity with her. Still, you reply, after a deep breath, it's over. You'll kill me if you leave me. Haley replies, her voice breaking into sobs. You'll live, you respond. You turn to leave, but hear the sound of breaking glass. You You turn and Haley lunges at you with a sharp shard from the silver-plated mirror. You are old and you've seen these tricks before, so you quickly disarm her. But in the heat of the moment, you begin to feed. And feed. And feed. When Haley's body falls slumped to the floor, you call Diane. Finale. Diane arrives at the apartment, finding you in a chair beside Haley's body. The blood has begun to dry onto your face. You haven't had a thorough feeding in years. You offer Diana a taste of your former lover's blood, warning her of the rancid taste.
Come on, second person. Come on, second person.
And we have more second person coming up. This next piece is called Screaming Tree. You wince as you tear off another piece of bark growing on your forearm and place the sample into a petri dish. You wipe the blood from where your epidermis should have to be and sanitize the wound. By the time you have the bandage ready, the bark is already grown back from where you had picked it and has taken more of your arm. You sigh, lower the blue sleeve of your uniform, and place the sample under a digital microscope. As always, the bark has root-like tendrils underneath its woody surface. You send the images back to Earth, which will take weeks to be received. You don't know exactly what has infected you. You know that it's some form of fauna native to Proxima Centauri b. Whether it is commensal or parasitic is still unclear. When you were infected 2 months ago, you had tried to hide it, not wanting to disturb the mission. But when the captain noticed the bark peeking from under your sleeve, he demanded to know what had happened. You couldn't answer, saying that it was probably nothing. You were having no adverse symptoms. It's nothing more than an alien scab. The next morning, you awoke to the USS Daphne launching without you. The rest of the research team had decided to abandon you on this planet, leaving behind its base, its research tech, and enough supplies to last you for 6 months. You get up and lunge out of the small lab. Another small patch of bark had started to grow behind your knee, making it harder to walk. You knew that you should try to eat, but the nausea kept you from even approaching the kitchen. As you walk past the communications room, you hear the dings of an incoming message, a sound you haven't heard since you first arrived on this planet. You sit in front of the communications unit and open the message. It's a pre-recorded message from NASA's Central Command. The Director of Interstellar Exploration and Research appears on the screen. You remember when she had given a speech before you had taken off, commemorating the first human travel to Proxima Centauri b. Then, her face had been full of hope and bright. Now her face was grim. We have received correspondence from Proxima Centauri b, she says. We do not know why you were left behind, but do not worry. We have sent a crew from the Pluto base to pick you and any of the survivors up at your base. Survivors? What does she mean by survivors? The USS Daphne was found adrift in the Oort cloud by a Chinese team, she continues. There were no survivors on the ship. We offer our condolences to the loss of your teammates. Expect the USS Persephone to arrive within a week of this message's arrival. You wish you could ask what happened, but images of a darkened USS Daphne appeared on the screen and give you the answer. There are pictures of the interior, where tree-like organisms are scattered throughout the rooms. They grow out of the corners, off the beds, from the floors. They eerily have screaming human faces and branches that are scratching themselves. On one of the trees, you notice the captain's badge embedded into the bark. You look down at the parasitic bark, wondering when you will become a screaming tree too. And we have enough time for maybe one more excerpt?
Go for it.
Okay, alright, so let me pull that file up real quick. So this is just the first section of a longer short story. And here we go. The Fallen Giant. Sir Lancelot was dead. That is what the messenger said when he arrived at the court of Camelot. After being taken hostage and driven mad by the sorceress Morgana, Sir Lancelot had thrown himself from a window of her tower. The squire pushed down the urge to smile at the news. He couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of joy at the news of Sir Lancelot's demise. A joy that bubbled from his stomach, but was pushed back down by his lungs, waiting to burst. A joy that reminded him of a sweet, flavorly flavored with anise. The squire glanced around the room to see how everyone took the news. Sir Percival's face went white. Sir Gawain's eyes grew wide with confusion and disbelief. Sir Mordred, as usual, failed to hide his apathy. Queen Guinevere held back tears, while King Arthur's face was stony and sullen. Lord Galahad, towering 5 heads taller than everyone else at the round table, nearly eye level with the king on his elevated throne, fought back the same tears as the queen. Any desire to smile dissipated when the squire saw his lord heartbroken. "Are you sure?" King Arthur asked. The messenger nodded. "We couldn't receive the body. Most likely the animals got to it first. However, we were able to find this." The messenger signaled for his companion to show the court a partially tattered black cloak stitched with golden thread, embroidered with oak leaves and ivy. The gasps filled the room. Queen Guinevere let out a heartbroken cry, and her ladies-in-waiting came to escort her from the throne room. The squire tried to parse the king's expression. Had King Arthur finally learned of the affair going on between his favorite knight and his wife? Was he pleased that his half-sister had dealt with the problem without even knowing it? "My liege," Lord Galahad said to King Arthur, his voice full of righteous and heartbroken fury, "allow me to get vengeance for our fallen brother. I will travel to that lecherous woman and no." King Arthur's face was solemn yet calm. There were no signs of hidden joy on the king's face. Lord Galahad stood in stunned silence. "My liege, if we are to get revenge, we mustn't do it in hasty anger," the king said. "Therefore I order all knights to stay away from Morgana for the time being. We will deal with her when the time is right." The room filled with muttered variations of "Yes, my lord." Lord Galahad simply bowed his head in defeat. King Arthur then thanked the messengers and had them give the cloak to Lord Galahad. "I know you were very close to him. It only seems fitting that you have this." Lord Galahad took the cloak and held it to his chest, rubbing the loose threads near some of the gold embroidery between his finger and thumb. He quietly thanked the king and left the court, the squire following briskly to follow the slow steps of the half-giant. "Where are we off to, my lord?" the squire asked as they made it to the stables. "Home." Lord Galahad mounted his horse, a bay Shire stallion just as massive as his rider. Once the squire was on his comparatively dwarfish gray Shire mare, the two rode off west toward Lord Galahad's castle of Salois. As the two rode out to the castle gates, black mourning drapes unfurled from the castle towers, making the gray sandstone look even grayer. It wasn't until Castle Camelot had disappeared behind the horizon that Galahad finally began to sob. His cries filled the air around them, shaking the autumn leaves free of their last leaves and ripping out the squire's heart. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I don't normally feel short, but tonight. Okay, we are about to go on intermission. Before we do, Henry Goldcamp's going to come up to y'all and talk to you about an amazing thing that is happening. Yeah, clap for Henry!
Thank you, Nikki. All right, you all are a rare breed, people that come out for literary readings. Do I have a treat for you? There is a new website. It is a literary hub for all things New Orleans. It's called LitWire.org. It's a simple calendar of events like WWOZ, you know, it kind of lists all the concerts. This is for everything literary in New Orleans. One-stop shop. You can import it to Outlook or Google Calendar, whatever, so you won't miss a thing. LitWire does a lot of things. One of the missions is to sort of document everything. So if you have a literary event, pop on to litwire.org, let us know, we'll schedule it, and then we'll also do our best to get there and record it.
Michelle is a NOLA native and third-year poet in the CWW. She is the recipient of the 2021 Andrea Saunders Garrity Academy of American Poets Award and currently serves as an associate poetry editor for Bayou Magazine. Her writing appears or is forthcoming in Tilted House Review, Talking River Review, Diode, Diode Poetry Journal, and elsewhere. Follow her on Instagram at Michelle.Antoinette.in. Go on up, Michelle. So much gratitude for you guys being here tonight. Thank you. Had so many plans and ideas. But I want to start by dedicating tonight, my performance tonight at least, to my friend Kai Ebersabel, who we lost last week to an act of violence. Particularly poignant because this past week was also the birthday of my cousin Leslie, who also didn't make it. So I also want to dedicate this to everyone in this building, our family, our friends. Let them know you love them, check in. After Robert Graham's source figure, at Noma, do not climb the sculpture to rise from water. Once a bridge, parting water, what now is a petrified pool, a chromium wave, suspended. Refugee among wired oaks, bronzed eyes, naked, posed, risposta, atop a barnacled column by snap of dungeness crabs, guarded, cupped hands hold the empty cup of an acorn, sprouts and burrows crack the marble pedestal under her cast feet. After Urban J. Puka Perez. His elders, versed in measured tides and rhyme-wed red Gulf traditions, exaggerate their trappings with every hurricane season at the end of the world, smitten with nursery rhymes and riddles. Puka insists his decimals be read as if we've never read before. His cans shake. As it was said, he shakes his cans. No, wrong tense. His pail quaked. As it is said, he shook his pale scales, can shake all he sang. From his quaking mail, his chains, his trade was delivering songs to kings. He trawled our decades for decades to collect our islander names and docu-pigeon sound strains. Look, strain sounds like a man, honing a decoy, a carved block, a duck. True. Betsy blew down the great dance hall, but still, even after the last big storm, it'll be never before the dead settle down. In memory, my home, my neighborhood remains. The sidewalk where I first drove, big kid on strawberry shortcake power wheels, cruising down Pauline Street to St. Claude, not keeping up at being seen. A slow rider, parallel with the highway, with jalopies and wagons and dusters. I was light amidst heavy metal flying past my tiny parade. Foot pressing, pushing maximum velocity at 2 years old. Head held porch high past pink azalea blooms, all the way to the junk shop where mother
would trade with the Avon lady, rollers in their hair, blowing smoke that swirled, appliances stacked to the ceiling. In a dim-lit corner store, women's heads stooped together amidst innumerable treasures. True. Candy Kid, New Orleans, House of Blues, SIN, Service Industry Night, where I was accustomed to second lining, walking in time. I was always smiling, but not showing a teeth. The stage was above, in front of me, and I was in the pit. Red spaghetti tank and wide-legged pants, Vans. Looking for the ladies' room, I wandered away from my friends, was suddenly surrounded. 6 men, shining, slick, beautiful. I tried to be cool, but was frozen. Wrists, ankles cuffed, body quartered, tossed into air onto one, thrusting, the others pulling, yanking, twisting hips, flailing open mouths, teeth cackle, crackle, static in my ears. In a flash, I was sat down, feet on ground. I weaved my way to the side door, through the alley, into the traffic night. Chinatown, Baktun, D&B, breakbeat night. I tried to pretend a narrow club in Manhattan was just like State Palace. Then the drugs kicked in. First time may have been backpacks, ponytails, and pixie sticks, a little LSD, colors motioning toward flow. There was never enough water. By the time I left, riverboat hallelujahs, hallways were choked with teenagers, writhing arms, legs, pacifiers, and I couldn't get out soon enough. I remember driving. This time, 4 men followed. I saw them in my rear view. 2 to distract and slip the Mickey, 2 to attract and slip. I drove off, but then, I forget. Lucky is a single line Long Island iced tea, good instincts and coming to alive in Brooklyn, reflectors on the turnpike that tear open the door of my new focus, waken me from my sleep. Last spring's dramedy. So there, now we woke up, and the sun says through his teeth, why don't you draw a star? A glacier-colored 5-point under your eye, but why listen to that guy penciling in his eyebrows? He's just trying to sell rainbows. Though I have to admit his lipstick is the slickest, richest, most even and durable shade I've ever seen, and the clouds that come with the rainbows are pretty. He says, you're the moon. What do you know about clouds? And Earth starts crying because she can't see her clouds like we do. And I would reach out if I had limbs, but I don't. And neither does that creep the sun who wants to draw us closer with his candy land. He'll burn us up. But I'm cool, and you're certainly not frozen. I say, put on your purple coat, gold collar. You say, why don't we paint a picture instead? Yes, I'll hold your sickle, and you take that cheesy cape off your shoulders. Oh, can you see how she'll see the sun, a flea, and the sky, hibiscus tea to sip from my new moon chalice, took it back to wash the dust from her icy feet. I have a few more. That's okay.
Please.
This is one, I don't think I've read it. It's from my my Ariadne Hippolyta thesis set. After they escaped the labyrinth, Calliste's pumice walls quaked, collapsed. A pyroclastic cloud-crowned farewell to lustral basins and vibrant Iran poses. Beeswax trunks buried to bedrock, shock absorbed all that remains, what is known. Their once elite bodies trained to dance, to retire, were lost under epiphany fire, and the time divine appeared in any form. Fishermen painted on every surface, frescoes woven angora, drank from the mouths of bovine horns and Egyptian gold. They forgot the wine, olive oil, once was blood. Islanders knew no empty places, filled gaps in wooden walls with pebbles, filled gaps in wooden planks with plaster, built rooms that flexed. They forgot to make sacrifice. Practicing stances off the coast of Lido. I also changed this. I thought I would try this in second person today. So it's a second person kind of day. Thank you for that, Spencer.
Come on, second person.
Practicing stances off the coast of Lido. The Adriatic lulls and contracts. A double Ouroboros of gold freckled jade, you drift past the shell blockade. Let wakes sheath your body. Your hair is spun brass threads catching light. A crown of glass, snakes writhing adagio notes. Eyes fixed on a bulb-nosed buoy, head hanging bright in air. Water never swallows you whole. You are port-de-bras arms, pointed foot and toe, passe, retiré, connecting before you press your soul flat to your inner thigh. Pivoting crane. In this pitching, you find the sea holds you afloat. Those poems. Maybe this one's old for some of you guys, but every time I read, these poems are different. Solstice ritual at the Frenchman art market with At Cricket's gift horse, the wild woman unkempt levers loose the teeth in my ears. Mola, Mohana, she shrugs, places them in your mouth. Her eyes are all antennae and leafy moth wings. She sinks her fingertips into her sternum and pries her chest apart, releasing beads in a ribbon from the cavity that was her body. Why hadn't I noticed the honeycomb above her antlered head? My hand sides thank you, and we walk our way. You wear 2 green stones, bezels set in skyscraper pendulums, dangling like lanky pears in pirouette. The entrance is dark, but you wear a headlamp. I am breathless, but you laugh and shimmy closer. Show me the empty cup of your palm as you whisper, she made it by hand. Silver-eyed, I see you for the first time. Your body is not attached to your head, is not attached to your, my head is not attached. We say yes. Last one. Radio signal from Alpha Canis Major, stars formerly worshipped as the list goes on. So stopped it. I mean the Dogon. I mean everyone knows about this trio. Whether you are Chaldea or over those deserts, Egypt, glimpse us beside the Milky Way alight. Within our wobbling orbit, we're rerouting age-old myths, quiet, fire high. We've known the swell of bliss eclipsed our Sirius B. Cygnus made a love called supernova, a mortal rendered her Eve. We like to think we float beyond such scorched horizons, but we grasp mere reflections for sight, no myths. Globes will frizzle as we are gathering worlds. After all, stones are small and sinking. Children conceive positions, the heavens, assign names, imagining fixed systems. Nevertheless, we draw near from far. And though this song will end, we mash with soul, twist circles round Luna, and tap a terrestrial tango, never after. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Give it up for Michelle one more time, y'all. Celestial tangos. All right, our last featured reader for tonight. Then we're going to have a quick break and then our open mic portion of the evening.
Open mic.
So sign up for open mic if you haven't yet. Our last featured reader, Luke Syrinides.
You got it.
Luke Syrinides graduated from the CWW in 2020 after a long, winding road. He currently works for the New Orleans Public Library and is in the midst of querying his YA speculative novel, Cydonia? Cydonia, wow. I promise that's not spelled the way that it looks or sounds.
It's a Mia song. Yeah.
Okay, Cydonia, just so everyone knows. Cydonia.
Yeah.
All right, come on up, Luke.
I was once the host of Gold Room. This is back when it was at the Pelican Club. If anyone went to that on Elysian Fields, and then if you had a bunch of One-Eyed Jacks, we had it there too. And I was editor.
I worked there for 8 years.
That's rare. Do you remember when Gold Room was there? That was my era. And then I also, who was it? When editor Bayou. I did that, and I worked for Neil. And I worked for. I was like doing it. Okay, and now I work. Central City Library with teens and tweens. I write for them. I have no interest in writing grown-up, serious things for adults. So this is going to go lightning fast because you know those YA chapters are really short, and I'm only going to read one. Here we go. This message is for Danny in exile, or whoever is seeing this, or hearing this, or reading this. Who knows how this record will be transmitted, if it gets to anyone at all. I waited as long as I could to log in one last time. It'll be a few hours before anyone starts looking for me, at least until dawn. First, I need to tell you how I learned what Cydonia was really all about. Its true purpose. My true purpose. It's crazy to think how little I knew 1 year ago, not to mention my entire life before then. I suppose you could say it all started the day I drowned. Earlier that day, my best friend Zeke came up to me and whispered, "Psst, Milo, now's our chance." We were on the playground of our primary school, Greenhaven Academy. We weren't completely alone, but Zeke was watching our aide, Miss Anita, like a hawk, and she stepped into the building for a second. He dared me for weeks to go with him to the creek that ran through the woods at the back of the property. I was 6 and not really the rule-breaking type, but I finally caved. Zeke dashed into the woods, calling out, "First one to the creek is the Pirate King." This is a good time to mention that neither of us knew how to swim. He dodged behind leafy branches and hopped over trees out of sight. Always so reckless. What if he tripped and broke a leg or scraped his face on a log? Someone needed to know he was safe. Turns out there was nothing scary about the woods once you were inside them. It had recently rained, and the leaves still shimmered like emeralds. At the creek, we climbed all over the rocks and boulders lining the bank, playing pirates, using long sticks as swords. Swinging my sword, I leaped from one boulder to another. On the third one, I slipped on a patch of moss and fell backwards into the creek. I went into a full-blown panic when I realized the creek was too deep for me to stand up. Zeke held out his stick, calling out, "Grab hold, Milo, grab hold." When he saw that wasn't doing any good, Zeke dropped the stick and ran towards the lawn, shouting for help. Meanwhile, I bobbed and flailed as the current pulled me under. When I rose, I gasped for air and gulped mouthfuls of water. When I sank, my shoes squelched on the gritty creek bed. Soon I stopped rising above the surface every time, and my lungs filled with water. Though it felt like hours later, it couldn't have been more than a minute before Zeke came tearing through the trees, frantically pointing at me, with Miss Anita seconds behind him. Darkness closed in just as I saw her colorful clothing, a bright blur of orange and purple. Miss Anita didn't miss a beat. She waded into the creek, grabbed me just as I blacked out, and hauled me ashore. For one terrifying minute, so Zeke told me, I looked dead. But Miss Anita did CPR and gave me mouth-to-mouth, and I sputtered back to life. She didn't say much as she marched us back to the lawn. She was angry, sure, but even more, I could tell she was shaken. She kept saying, "You are alive." She repeated that phrase a few times, "You are alive," like she was trying to convince herself everything was okay. Zeke and I both cried after we were brought back to the lawn, two little boys, shocked, scared since we knew we were in major trouble. But also, we were overwhelmed with relief. The young aide who was training alongside Miss Anita had been distracted by girls playing hopscotch when we slipped away. Her face, normally pale with freckles, went completely red as she cried too. She looked terrified and kept apologizing to Miss Anita, who gave her the same stern look she used on me and Zeke. Later on, while we were sitting outside the principal's office, and Miss Anita and the young aide were inside, I heard the principal yelling, "Do you have any idea how valuable they are? If we'd lost even one." I felt terrible because Zeke and I were really to blame. The young aide was probably crying because she knew she'd been fired for letting us slip away. Anyway, I never saw her again. Over time, I almost forgot about the whole drowning thing until Miss Anita reminded me on my last day. There was a little graduation ceremony in the afternoon for us 8th graders, but otherwise it was a quiet, normal day. In the evening, Miss Anita called me out of the kitchen, perfect timing as I was on cleanup duty at the time. I figured she wanted to help me to load cargo onto the buses or something, but she brought me to an empty classroom. Her black dress and trench coat were a far cry from the bright colors and print she usually wore. Once we were alone, she said, "I wanted to take a minute to say goodbye, to wish you well and give you something to remember me by." That's when she handed me a small stone. It was smooth and flat and gray, with a misshapen white splotch on the surface, and a smaller gray splotch inside of that, so it looked like an eye staring up at me from Miss Anita's open palm. She said, "I want this stone to be a reminder, not only of me and of Greenhaven, but a reminder to you, Milo, of your own strength, your ability to take care of yourself. I took this stone from the creek so you'll remember that you can be strong, even when you're scared." When I reminded Miss Anita that she had saved me from drowning, she said, "Maybe, but you're tougher than you think. Take care of yourself at Sidonia, that's all, and trust yourself, Milo. You've got to trust yourself. I won't be around, and the next few years will be harder for you, but you know that already. Anyway, I guess you'd better get back to your post." I should probably clarify what I knew at that point about the next few years, or what I thought I knew. I knew that because of our condition, we were facing some tough years ahead, not just me, but all the students at Greenhaven and the other primary schools around the country for kids like us. Our health was the reason we were going to Sidonia in the first place. We'd all been placed at the primaries as babies because doctors and researchers were still studying our disorder, even in its earliest stages. One time, when I was about 5, I asked an aide when I could expect to start getting sick. Would it be soon? What would happen exactly? He shut down my questioning right away, giving me the same explanation I get every time I raise the question. While we were young, we'd be mostly healthy, but at some point in our teenage years, our bodies would start breaking down, and we'd most likely become ill, maybe even severely. There was no telling how exactly the illness would appear, but whenever that happened, we'd need more specialized medical care, which we'd get at Sidonia. Miss Anita finished speaking. As she finished speaking, the announcement came over the loudspeaker. All 8th grade students should report to the lawn for boarding. I slipped the stone into my pocket and paused before heading out the door. This was goodbye, I realized, and it was tough to know what to say. Miss Anita surprised me by hugging me, which was totally unheard of for an aide to hug a student, but it was wonderful. It's funny how you can unconsciously long for something for years. I'd always wanted a hug, but didn't know it until just then, just as it happened. When I pulled away, there were tears running down Miss Anita's cheeks. She asked, "Milo, were you happy at Greenhaven? I mean, did you have a happy childhood?" Yes, I said, I did. Good, she said. She wiped away her tears and bucked up. Good. Then I've done my job. I joined the rest of my class on the front lawn, and aides holding clipboards checked off each student as we boarded the yellow school buses. There was the usual excited chatter and roughhousing after everyone found a seat. We were excited to leave, as we always were, on one of our day trips to the beach on the Gulf of Mexico, or a nearby state forest. My friend Glenna squirmed in the seat next to me. 0 days, 0 days, as she chanted. She took her wiry black hair out of its usual ponytail and whipped it around for dramatic effect. For weeks, we'd all been counting down the days until we left for Sidonia. We chose our electives and got a virtual tour of the campus, eager to meet the students from the other 3 primary schools, not to mention reuniting with older friends from Green Haven, who went on the year before. Of course, there was one person Glenna and I were both eager to see again, Zeke. See, Zeke and I had been best friends our whole lives. He was only a few months older than me, but we were born on either side of the August cutoff, so he was in the grade ahead. Our slight age difference never mattered much until it meant Zeke went off to Sidonia a year earlier than I did. As for Glenna, she and Zeke officially became boyfriend and girlfriend the year before, a few months before he graduated. They both promised not to go out with anyone else for the next year until they were together again. Glenn and I were always good friends ourselves, but over the past year, with Zeke gone and no way to contact him, we became especially close. Glenna could tell something was up when I didn't join in the fun and energy of the bus. What's eating you? And I just had a weird conversation with Miss Anita. I told Glenna about it and showed her the eye stone, as I've come to think of it. Glenna took the stone and held it in front of her own eye, her own left eye, and closed her right and stuck out her tongue. It looked comically freakish and I laughed. She tossed it back to me and said, I don't think that's weird. It's sweet. Miss Anita's always loved you. Loved. I'd never considered that, but it was true. Miss Anita loved me. And I knew that even though she'd never said it. I realize now she probably wasn't allowed to say it, legally or whatever. 2 drivers walked around the outside of the bus as usual, drawing the shades over each window with a long hooked pole and fastening the shades in place before we left. Glenna told me to take one last look before our shade was drawn. Miss Anita stood on the lawn as the sun set behind her, standing back from the rest of the aides and teachers. She took off her signature cat-eye sunglasses, and we looked at each other, but neither of us waved goodbye. I slipped the eye stone into my pocket. The driver pulled the shade over my window, and Miss Anita and all of Green Haven vanished. And that's it!
Y'all, we are about to go on break. Before we do, I'm inviting Cameron Lovejoy up onto the stage to talk about the Tilted House review real fast, and then we'll do 10 minutes. Come on up, Cameron.
Hey everybody. Yeah, I host, or I run with a lot of other people in the city. God, there's so many people here. A print magazine and an online magazine called Tilted House. If you'd like to submit anything, you're welcome to. We have the Review, which is a print magazine that's hand-bound, small run, beautiful thing. It comes out twice a year, and the submissions are open right now. And the online is rolling, so you can send art, poetry, plays, experimental stuff, avant-garde stuff, anything at all. So please send it to us, tiltedhouse.org.
Woo-hoo!